is the more than $1 billion in trade that crosses that border every single day. Metro Detroit, in fact, is the fourth largest city in America for exports, and we have the largest, busiest northern border crossing in the country. While the cameras are obsessed with showing you decay, we are seeing an auto industry that is roaring back. We are seeing the Chrysler plant that the New York Times called one of the most modern and successful auto plants in the world in Detroit. That plant employs more than 4,000 people and added a third shift at the end of last year to build the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Ford Motor Company reported record North American profits in the second quarter and growth in every sales region. GM's global sales are up, and they too are making record profits again, hiring workers and investing in new plants and technologies. So while it's true that the city government is going through a terrible time and a bankruptcy, and that process will be very painful and very difficult for many, many people in the city, many people who work very, very hard. It would be a mistake to count Detroit out. It would be a mistake to think that there isn't opportunity in our great city of Detroit. It would be a mistake to think that Detroit isn't coming back. Because if you're going to say anything about Detroit, you have to say times may be tough, but so are the people of Detroit. Times may be tough, but the leaders, the businesses, the educators are tough. Our people, our businesses are smart and talented and care deeply and are committed to make sure that this great city called Detroit comes roaring back better than ever. Thank you, Mr. President. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Earlier on the Senate floor, Senators Murray and Collins said basically that they're finished with Senate floor debate this week on the Transportation and Housing Spending Bill, and they'll be back on Monday to work on amendments to the bill. As part of our live coverage tomorrow, we'll have a panel at the Cato Institute discussing the effect of immigration on the job market and the economy. That'll be live at noon Eastern on C-SPAN. Once again, we'll try to bring you comments now from Secretary of State John Kerry and U.S. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. They spoke today about Syria outside the UN security meeting.
To cover, therefore I'll be very brief what we are going to discuss. First of all, of course, we will be discussing this appalling situation in Syria. The conflict is now continuing almost 2.5 years. more than 100,000 people have been killed. Millions of people have either been displaced or become refugees in neighboring countries. We have to bring this to an end. The military and violent actions must be stopped by both parties, and it is thus imperative to have a peace conference in Geneva as soon as possible, as was initiated by Secretary Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. Joint Special Representative Lakhdar Brahimi and I will spare no efforts to convene this meeting as soon as possible. At the same time, as you may know, the head of Chemical Weapons Investigation Team, Dr. Sellstrom, and my High Representative for Disarmament, Angela Kane, have just visited Syria, are meeting senior officials of the Syrian government to discuss about the modalities of investigation. I will get the report since they are coming out of Syria now. We'll get the report soon. On Middle East, I would like to highly commend and appreciate Secretary Kerry's leadership and consistent and principled engagement to revive this peace process for two-state solution. Hard negotiations will lie ahead, but only the parties can make a decision, hard decisions. I strongly urge the leaders of Palestine and Israel to seize this opportunity and respond positively and courageously so that the two-state solution can be realized as soon as possible. With Secretary Kerry and members of the Security Council, today we will discuss about this horrendous suffering now in the east of Democratic Republic of the Congo and in the region. It is imperative that we support the framework agreement for peace, security, and cooperation in the DRC and in the Great Lake region. In that regard, I welcome the convening of this Security Council meeting on the situation in DRC, chaired by Secretary Kerry. And I also welcome the appointment of U.S. Government Special Envoy, Senator Russ Feingold. I hope that you will very closely coordinate with my Special Envoy Mary Robinson and my Special Representative Martin Kobler, who will work very closely with you and other parties. Beyond these all regional conflicts, Secretary Kerry and U.S. government, President Obama, have been helping the United Nations and international community to combat climate change and to define and establish sustainable development goals and sustainable development agenda. These are keys to long-term prosperity of this world, and I count on continuing leadership and engagement and support of Secretary Kerry and President Obama and U.S. government. U.S. government strong leadership is crucial in addressing all regional global issues for humanity. Again, Mr. Secretary, welcome to the United Nations, and I look forward to have continuing partnership and strong support and engagement of U.S. government. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Do I need to? There we go. Well, Mr. Secretary General, thank you for a very generous, warm welcome here to the United Nations. It's a privilege for me to be here with you. I'm honored to have the privilege of chairing the Security Council debate today on the subject of the Great Lakes region. We are very grateful for your leadership, grateful for the United Nations. I was just a few days ago in the Zatri refugee camp in Jordan, where I saw firsthand the extraordinary work of the United Nations, the experience that they have brought to the table in an effort to relieve enormous levels of suffering that is growing by the day, which requires all of us to work even harder to try to bring about peace negotiations. There is no military solution to Syria. There is only a political solution, and that will require leadership in order to bring people to the table. Yesterday I had a conversation with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov of Russia. We remain committed to the effort to bring the parties to a Geneva II, to implement Geneva I. And we will try our hardest to make that happen as soon as is possible. In the Great Lakes region, there is an opportunity for peace. This is an area that has been beleaguered by targeted, egregious violence. And the framework that has been put in place is an opportunity to be able to make a difference. Special Envoy, former Senator Russ Feingold, will indeed cooperate extremely closely with Special Representative Mary Robinson, and looks forward to going to work in order to implement the framework and bring about a sustainable solution to the absence of governance and to the problems of violence in that part of the world. With respect to other areas, there are huge challenges, and we know. In South Sudan, in Jonglei State, we need access, humanitarian access. And we will continue to press President Kiir and others in order to make that available. And finally, the granddaddy of them all, I guess, the question of the possibility of peace between Palestinians and Israelis. Both leaders in the region, Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas, have made a courageous decision to try to return to final status talks. And it's my hope that that will be able to happen as procedures are put in place by both countries in order to empower that. So, Mr. Secretary General, it's a privilege to be here in this institution which dedicates itself day to day to ending violence, to enforcing people's prospects for peace, and to trying to live by a code of universal values that I think all of us are proud to be affiliated with. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for welcoming me here today. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent the call of the quorum be vitiated.
Without objection.
I now ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to executive session and be in order to file cloture on executive calendar numbers 208, 223, 224, 104, further that the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived. Finally, that this request is granted, the Senate resume legislative session after the final cloture motion is reported pursuant to this order.
Without objection, the Senate will report. We'll move to executive session, and the clerk will report the nomination.
Department of Justice, James B. Comey, Jr. of Connecticut, to be Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
I send a cloture motion to the desk on calendar number 208.
The clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of James B. Comey, Jr. of Connecticut, to be Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, signed by 17 senators as follows. Read it,
I
Nevada.
ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, that reading the names be waived.
Without objection. The clerk will report the next nomination.
National Labor Relations Board, Kent Yoshiho Hirozawa of New York, to be a member of the National Labor Relations Board.
I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of Kent Yoshiho Hirozawa of New York to be a member with the National Labor Relations Board, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent that reading the names be waived.
Without objection. The clerk will report the next nomination.
National Labor Relations Board, Nancy Jean Schiffer of Maryland, to be a member of the National Labor Relations Board.
Mr. President, there is my understanding there's a cloture motion at the desk to be reported.
That is correct. The clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of Nancy Jean Schiffer of Maryland to be a member of the National Labor Relations Board, signed by 17 senators as follows.
I ask unanimous consent that reading the names be waived.
The clerk will report the next nomination.
Mr. President, there's a cloture motion. I ask that. Oh, I'm sorry, it hasn't been reported. Pardon me.
National Labor Relations Board, Mark Gaston Pierce of New York, to be a member.
I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of Mark Gaston Pierce of New York to be a member of the National Labor Relations Board, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to reading the names be waived.
Without objection. And under the previous order, the Senate will resume legislative session.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to S-Res 200.
Clerk will report.
S-Res 200, designating July 26, 2013 as United States Intelligence Professionals Day.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motion we consider be laid on the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, the Senate proceed to S-Res 201.
Clerk will report.
S-Res 201, designating the first Wednesday in September 2013 National Polycystic Kidney Disease Awareness Day, and so forth.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I now ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes the business day adjourned until Monday, July 29th at 2 p.m., that following the prayer and the pledge in the morning hour be deemed expired. Journal proceedings be approved to date. The time for the 2 leaders be reserved for use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, the Senate being a period of morning business until 4:15, with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each. That following morning business, Senate resumed consideration of the Transportation Appropriation Bill. Further, at 4:30 p.m., the Senate proceeded to executive session to consider account number 208, which is the nomination of James Coney be Director of the FBI, with the time until 5:30 p.m. equally divided and controlled in the usual form. And finally, I'm sorry, Mr. President, at 5:30 the Senate proceed to vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the Comey nomination.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the next roll call vote then will be cloture on the Comey nomination Monday evening. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Monday.
Well, the Senate today continued debate on spending for next budget year on transportation, housing, and community development. Senators are now going through amendments. The new budget year starts on October 1st. This is the first of a dozen such spending bills that are awaiting action. Senators did take time away from that debate to confirm Tony West as Associate Attorney General. It's the third highest position in the Justice Department. Previously, he led the department's Civil Rights Division. Live coverage of the Senate when they return here on C-SPAN 2.